Hey friends, Dean here. Before we get you on to your episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to our next virtual online trivia night. Wednesday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Join us either on our Facebook group or on our YouTube page for 3 rounds of fun trivia, music questions, movie questions, general knowledge questions. It'll be a fun time and a chance to win some prizes and have just a good relaxing night of some trivia at home. You don't even have to go out for it. So don't forget, Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m. Join us on our Facebook group or YouTube for 3 rounds of fun virtual online trivia. We'll see you there. Wake up your Tamagotchi, open a fresh pack of Pogs, and button that flannel shirt, because we're coming at you with a top 5 alternative hits of the 90s. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Dean Legiro here, your host, along with Eric Kuber, your host as well. There's 2 hosts here.
Well, yeah.
How are you?
I was kind of waiting for you to say that, but
I did.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Yep. Thank you for joining us. You can find us on social media. We're at 3324 Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. We do live shows every other week for your viewing pleasure. That's your opportunity to interact. The big exciting news, we now have a Facebook group where you can post and interact with us as well. It's a lot of fun. So join us over there, won't you? And for this top 5, we have a special guest. Christy Cuomo is with us. She is another multi-hyphenate. Our guests seem to be multi-hyphenates. Actor, writer, director. I had the privilege and honor to work with her during our Level 92 Films project, and she's also a producer extraordinaire. So welcome, Christy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you, Dean and Eric.
Yeah.
Nice to have you as well. So this top 5 is the top 5 alternative songs of the 90s. And that was kind of a throwaway subject initially. I was like, oh yeah, let's just, I want to do top 5. And Christy's like, yeah, like top 5 90s would be great of alternative. I didn't know how difficult this was going to be.
You should know by now that nothing is throwaway on this show. We got standards, so you need to, come on now. It has to be hard. It has to be difficult.
It took me longer to make my list than it did to pick out the color of the car I bought. And that is a fact.
Yeah,
that's great.
The mistake I made was pulling up there's a Spotify playlist called 90s Alternative Hits.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll check this out. I pretty much knew, I had like the bunch in my head, and then it's like a song came on. I'm like, damn it. And then another song, I'm like, damn it.
I know.
And then another one, I'm like,
hard.
Damn it. I'm like, ones that I forgot about, ones that are just so great. And it made it worse. It made the indecision even more amplified. Was that what happened with you, Christy? Or did you have too many?
No, 1,000%. I started out and it was supposed to be 5, and I was just writing down songs. I didn't even get to listen yet. I had 25. And they're legit. They're all absolutely legit. I don't think when I was living in the time of it, and it was certainly my music, that I realized how much good music was coming out of that time period. And to this day, and it's certainly my personal preference of music, you listen to it and for me, it parallels what I imagine the 70s are like for people in terms of time periods and the importance that it had. Yep. So this was so incredible. To have 5 was, and we'll get into it, but it was painful to get it down to 5.
So if I'm reading this right, because it seems like we all have like more than enough. I think that the top 5 will probably take a half hour. The honorable mentions will take about 7 hours.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I probably don't have quite as many as you guys do, but I kind of approached mine with the 90s. As I mentioned on the Nirvana episode, and probably the Jewel, that a lot of this music was just at the time was like passing me by. I really, really wasn't paying that much attention because I was still getting into stuff from way back, like the 60s and 70s. I was still approaching that kind of stuff and getting into like other things like jazz and blues and all this other kind of thing. But you're right, Christy, they're so much great stuff, so much great music.
Well, what I think might have happened is because we have a 10-year age gap between us. So for me, it was a perfect storm. I was 14 to 18 years old. Yeah. And those 4 years is just that adolescence and that moodiness and that angst and literally everything that they were singing about. So for me, it was like, and growing up, I had a good amount of light and dark. As a creative person, I think a lot of us, we toggle between the two. So it wasn't walking around like, oh, kill me now or anything like that. But I was writing poetry. I wasn't afraid to explore inside of myself. Like I was self-reflecting. I was always told I was an old soul, even as a young
you
kid.
And Eric should meet and go bowling.
And do you have bowling shoes there?
Yeah, sure. My size 12s.
But when this music hit, it was like, oh, okay, like there's kindred spirits out there, and it spoke to me. So I think that 10 years, like for me, it was just I was in the moment and I was loving every second of it.
Yeah. I think for me, I always thought myself as being disconnected from music at that point, as far as popular music. I'd always, in looking back, I'm like, oh, pretty much the 80s, I stopped and was kind of like not into anything. But after listening to the playlist and going through, I forgot how much music I was listening, even though I wasn't buying the albums.
Right.
There was still, MTV was still kind of vibrant at the time, and still, because I'm looking at the list and I'm remembering the videos as well. I'm like, I remember the videos when they were being played. So MTV was still kind of a factor throughout it all, and big into, that's when kind of like the Napster thing was going on, and sharing for as whatever good or bad that was. And just that whole consumption of individual MP3s, people started ripping their CDs. So you had early MP3 players coming onto the scene and recompiling stuff. It was, it was like the era of the mixtape again, but burning your own CDs using computers and whatnot. So I just really didn't realize how connected I was to this decade as much as I didn't think I was. So anyway, are we ready to start? So we're going to start off with Eric, and Christy will go, and then I will go. Now, okay.
I know where you're going. I know Eric breaks the rules all the time, right? So
now we're told. Yeah, well, I was going to just lay this out, and just so you know what you're breaking, what rules you're breaking. Because if you don't know the rules you're breaking, then there's not rules, and you're not breaking them. So. 90s alternative. That covers pop as well. There are alternative pop groups. There was plenty of them, and I certainly have a few on my list. So I think we're going from like grunge to like the closest thing that's not like a boy band or anything like that.
Alternative is a very, to me, it's a very loose term.
We'll see how loose you go with it, though. There's loose, and then there's Eric. All right. So why don't we see what we're in for? You kick us off.
Okay.
Number 5 of the top 5 alternative hits of the 90s. Roll it out. Let's see what you got.
I don't have, this is in no particular order. I really don't have any order of preference here. This song from 94, so fun. So fun. When I first heard it, I thought it was David Byrne. I thought it was Talking Heads. And it's Send Me On My Way by Rusted Root. From When I Woke album. Such a fun song. I love the sort of Paul Simon Graceland vibe it has. It kind of calls back to that world music thing. There's like all kinds of exotic instruments being played in this thing. And I got to be honest, I love pulling out my congas to this song, and I play along with it, and I just bang it, or anything I could find to bang on. I love, playing along. It's such a fun song. It appeared in like, I think not one, but like 2 or 3 different kids movies, including Matilda. And I never really consider, I guess there's a sort of a childlike quality to it, but I never really considered it like a kid's song. It's just very catchy and it's just fun.
Yeah.
And when it really kicks in, they're all going, it's just,
it's got that little fluty thing in it.
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
You can't help but just, it's just such a pleasant trip. So yeah, that's my memory.
That's a great choice, and I totally forgot about it, and I should not have. Shame on me. That's like they were like Rusted Roots, like the crunchy granola alternative area, like they were like the hippie edge of
they're kind of rootsy thing. Well, but they do more. It's like they're progressive in their approach. So
they had a couple of hits besides Send Me On My Way. I can't think of them, but like Dean said, they did escape me, but they are
kind of Dave Matthews-ish as well.
They're kind of jammy. They're kind of, but that world music flavor, you know, but more poppy, more sort of like, bare.
Great
they're
choice.
Not as extended, so, but yeah.
You
it is.
Have chosen wisely.
Well, it gets better from there. So
okay.
We'll see. I don't know.
Just because you referenced Dave Matthews, I'll tell you that Dave Matthews did not fit into this category for me, and that's the only reason he didn't make any list, because he put out some. He's just Dave Matthews Band. So I'm just putting it out as a disclaimer.
It was really hard.
He will not be found on
no.
your
So
list.
if you were making a little side list with my songs on there, Dean, you just lost one. Okay.
Nope. He was not.
Well, he's not on mine either, and I was a huge fan.
I mean,
back in the day,
Under the Table and Dreaming, that when that album came out, it just knocked me on my ass. I'm not gonna lie, like that was a great album, and to this day is just amazing.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the whole '90s, or the segment of music that we're talking about, I found is that a lot of these artists, or the ones that are kind of on my list, or maybe on both of our lists, or all of our lists, didn't have a lot of longevity.
No.
Like Rusted Root, like that was like their moment.
Yeah.
There was a lot of these artists that had really great songs, and there was just one, and they kind of came out. It was almost like
the 70s, wasn't it? Like one-hit wonders. Yeah.
But there were so many of them that just didn't. They hit once because it was just kind of all cashing in on a certain style. Great. And then you never heard from again. So
that goes back to what I was saying earlier. The parallels, if you think about it, between the 90s and the 70s, with the abuse of alcohol and drugs. The abuse of alcohol and drugs. The drugs might have changed. It was heroin in the 90s. Took a lot of these young artists. The addiction to heroin was insane. In the 70s, it was different drugs. But these parallels of these one-hit wonders, or these incredible bands, and then they just disappeared. And it's like, what happened?
It was a return to form too. It was like a very analog. It went, the digital era was kind of phasing out. All of that polished, electronic stuff was kind of leaving, and we were back to guitars again, and real drums
and songwriters, kind of and people sitting down and writing songs, like pouring their hearts out. It was, and Steve may disagree with this, but I could take someone like Eddie Vedder and say that there's you can kind of say he's Jim Morrison like in some ways. It's there's so much poetry there, and there's this vibe that this person gives out, and this connection that people feel to them. So for me, the 90s and the 70s are just and they're my two favorite time periods of music.
I think what happened in the 90s was with the rise of grunge. I think that because it happened literally at the beginning of the decade, I think it actually reset rock music, as it were, because like Eric said, the 80s had all that polish and the really glossy production sounds. And when grunge literally hit, it kind of reset the way records are made. And then things started to re-evolve again. Then this is where this alternative kind of music came from. Is it grew out of grunge? It got a little more poppier. Some other groups took the next step forward of more poppier and kind of I think the 90s were kind of like a reset for the music because of grunge. They were able to kind of you saw like these groups more introspective writing again, and it wasn't all the glossy electronic of the 80s. So Christy, what do you have for your top 5 alternative hits of the 90s?
I have Hunger Strike, Temple of the Dog.
Nice.
And that is a really really important album for a number of reasons. One is it was the beginning of Pearl Jam, which for me, as will come up multiple times as I've already gone to Eddie Vedder, is just for me, I am just a huge Pearl Jam fan. But you had Mother Love Bone. I don't know if you know who they are, but their lead singer died of, I believe it was a heroin overdose. And Chris Cornell was roommates with him. And he got together with Jeff and Stone were in the band of Mother Love Bone. They were going to start off on Pearl Jam. Chris Cornell got in, then they got Mike McCready. And then I think Eddie Vedder had sent in a demo tape for Pearl Jam, and then they got him on this, and then they just sang Hunger Strike. And it was, Chris Cornell sang one verse that was identical to Eddie Vedder, and it was just the contrasting voices. And it was just about not giving in to fame and fortune and staying true to who you were. And you heard the song and you were just like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? Because again, coming from the 80s and all of this poppiness and polished music and synthesizers and freestyle. And I never really in the 80s kind of grasped onto anything. I think I was listening to, like Dan Hill when in the 80s. Like my friends are listening to freestyle and I'm listening to like 106.7.
Sounds like yacht rock to me. Right, Eric?
Eric and I listen to it when we go bowling. And so when Hunger Strike, when you heard Hunger Strike, you're like, wow, like, and just the voices and you can hear the pain in those voices. And for me, Hunger Strike was just
yeah. What a debut from Eddie Vedder. I mean, he was virtually an unknown. Chris Cornell was back then. Soundgarden was still relatively unknown as well. So for these two just to like make this tribute album is really what it is, and what a debut. I mean, yeah, you hear like. If you want to know everything to need to know about Eddie Vedder, listen to Hunger Strike. And that's like his vocal inflections, everything that he laid out in Pearl Jam, it began right there.
And to the people listening, if you've never listened to Mother Love Bone, there's a song it's called Crown of Thorns, which Pearl Jam does a cover of, which is phenomenal. I think you can, it's on the Pearl Jam 20 album, which, Spotify, wherever you get your music from, but definitely worth listening to. It's a great cover. And the Temple of the Dog actually started because Chris Cornell wrote some songs as a tribute to Andrew Wood as because it was his roommate and he died. So that's how this whole thing started. So it was just it's an important song for this period.
Yeah, and definitely one of the early purveyors of grunge. If you're looking for those early seeds where, Nirvana and the beginnings of these groups, that's where you can go. My number 5 is nothing like any of those. My number 5 is really kind of this is going to be the first shot of pop music, but it is such a great song.
I know what it is. What it is.
My number 5 is The Way by Fastball.
That's not what I thought it was going to be, but that's
really
good.
What a great, just bouncy 1998-ish. Like I was saying, kind of the music was evolving out of grunge and into alternative, and then getting some of the pop stylings, but still maintaining some of that quirky edge and not full boy band stuff. And The Way by Fastball is just a great, it's got the twangy guitar solo, which I love. It's got that surfy guitar.
Yes. Okay.
It's a 3-piece outfit. So, they really are it's a tight sounding song. The song is actually inspired by a real life article about this old couple who died. They were found dead in their car and they were like not near like where they were supposed to be. Like they were going somewhere. And they wrote a song about it. And The Way was just like, this was just on a constant loop, this song for me. Like back in when it came out in 98, it was all over MTV. I think McGee, who was a big director, who became a big director. Now, you don't even hear about McGee anymore, right? He was like big for like in the early 2000s, but he was a music video director. I think this was one of his, and you could tell. Yeah. It's got that style, but yeah, The Way by Fastball is just,
Great choice.
They're one of those guys.
Yeah.
These guys are like around at festivals, like local festivals nowadays, but
Sure. Yeah.
kind of they had that one moment with this song, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to make a playlist on I'll make a Spotify playlist of all of our picks, and we'll share it to the group, so you'll be able to listen to everybody's choices. So my number 5 is The Way by Fastball. Eric,
Great.
number 4.
Okay.
Let it rip.
So my number 4 is the aptly titled. This is not a hit per se, but it was recorded in 91 for their first album, but it became an outtake. Oddly enough, I don't know if I was really impressed with the fact that they came out with an album so early of outtakes and B-sides, only after 2 major releases. But it's the Smashing Pumpkins from Pisces Iscariot, and the song called Obscured, which I absolutely love. It's a sort of spacey kind of thing. And I actually kind of got into it a little bit later when I was going through a really difficult time in the 90s. I had moved to Florida and I met a lot of great people down there. That's where I met my current wife. And they were all into these kinds of groups like the Pumpkins. So I kind of owe it to them. They kind of got me into this stuff. This album is like nothing on this album is like throwaway for me. This has like their cover of Landslide, Fleetwood Mac. It has,
which is a great cover. That's a great cover. There's
like 3 different. Yeah. It is. It's just. It is a great cover, and it kind of blurs the line, like we were talking about, like the 70s and the 90s, right? It's like Billy Corgan really touched upon that. That connection there, or that sort of, going back there. And I know I know Fleetwood Mac might have been Tusk, could have been the inspiration for songs like that and songs like Obscured, because it's very kind of spacey. There's a little, electric guitar flourishes. It's mostly acoustic. And it kind of fades into this like odd, like real, like kind of off-putting, like tone, like, and it just kind of, fades into that. And it leaves you kind of disturbed. Like, you just, that's the Pumpkins. They're always looking to do something different there. And their early stuff, I don't like anything past Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. I mean, everything they did after that, I just, I could do without, but I really like their first 2 records. And this album, like I said, just a really great sort of odds and sides. It reminds me of the Who's Odds and Sides. It was that kind of album. And like I said, nothing is throwaway on this record, but Obscured, I love the lyrics. I kind of relate to a lot of the lyrics, lost your head. Now I sleep on the floor. Things we said, we don't say anymore. Those, kinds of things. So it really it was quite apt of what was happening with me, with my divorce and, and then meeting my new wife, and just that sort of up and down of love lost, love found. So, groups like this and albums like this sort of came at the right time. And there were several that kind of fell into my lap that way in the 90s. So yeah.
Cool.
So that's it. That's my number 4. Yep.
Yeah. The Pumpkins could like do no wrong in the 90s. I mean, they were like one of those groups that was just like one after the other, and album after album. They were the ones that were able to sustain a little bit of a career through that, because it was like, they just were piling the albums on top of each other and stuff that was just very listenable. And Cherub Rock. If I was going to have Pumpkins on my list and they're not, it would be Cherub Rock.
Yeah. I love their acoustic version they did for Unplugged.
What? How could that be acoustic? That could never be an acoustic
We
song.
did it. Andy, our friend Andy, and this other guy, CJ, he sang. Andy played guitar. And I played bongos, and we covered the song ourselves in my living room, and we actually, I wish I had a recording of it, because it wasn't bad.
Is it on YouTube?
No, I don't think it wasn't around then.
Okay.
So did you like Bullet with Butterfly Wings in 1979, or were those too poppy for you?
No, I love the range that they had.
Okay.
Because they could go from something like that. They can go from like real hard grunge or something real. I kind of always thought of them as like, I'm a big fan of like progressive rock. So that, I always found like the Pumpkins, they were always pushing that envelope anyway. So they were always doing something different.
Man,
every song
he could change his voice up. Yeah, he could go really soft and tender, and then he would have a little bit of a rasp in his voice.
This song has that breathy vocal. It's really soft, but it's nice. And Darcy's bass playing on this is really sublime. Nice. So yeah, it's a great track.
Wow.
So
You, my friend, are surprising me. You are throwing some shock waves at me. Nice. Well done. Pumpkins, huh?
Okay.
All right. Number 4 for Christy. Roll it out.
Well, if Eric shocked you with Smashing Pumpkins, you're not going to see this one coming. Wake Up, Mad Season. Do you know Mad Season?
Yeah.
Well, you do. Eric's looking like, oh.
I know
for those,
if I
for
heard
those
the
that,
song.
for those that don't,
Wake Up. I don't know.
I beg you after this, to anyone that's listening to this, I implore you to listen to the album Above by Mad Season. It is probably one of the greatest albums to come out in that time. And there's a lot of good albums. I will tell you that I can rattle off 5 albums where I'm like, there's not one bad song. This is a phenomenal album. And Wake Up is a song. So Lane Staley, who is the lead singer of Alice in Chains, Alice in Chains is the lead singer of Mad Season. Who was Mike McCready who it was like a super group. It was a few people. And Wake Up is a song he wrote about his heroin addiction. And the lyrics are just haunting. The voice is haunting. The music, it is so, you listen to it and you can hear he's writing this song trying to convince himself to stop using heroin. I don't have a singing voice, and you want to keep your listeners, so I'll say some of the lyrics, which is I think it's wake up, young man, you have to wake up. This love affair has got to end, 10 long years. So it's something like that. And he's saying, for 10 years, I've been using heroin, and there's no way. Like this is a slow suicide. And sadly, in 2002, he dies of a heroin overdose. But it was a crying out for help, or just admitting out loud to the world, I have this. And there's a beauty in that. It's tragic, and I don't mean to sound. I'm not saying that his death was beautiful, but there's a beauty in just being able to express that in that way.
Yeah, there's an honesty to it. There's a truth to it, and that if anything, he didn't. I would say, I guess, even though unfortunately it took him, but he didn't die in vain, because at least he got that out there. And
who knows how many lives he could have potentially helped save. But it's just, you have River of Deceit on that album. There's so many good songs. If you've never heard it, please listen to it. It's just a really good album.
She's going deep. Well, deep in the well.
She's going with 2 awesome. so far 2 super groups. Unfortunately,
right.
Well, no. Traveling Wilburys did put out an album in the 90s.
Traveling Wilburys.
They don't fall under alternative. Well, it looks like you're going for super groups, so I was just trying to find one. I'm trying to figure out what the next path was, but they're not really alternative.
He's got to squeeze Jeff Lynne in there somewhere, right? It always comes back to Jeff Lynne. Always.
I'm just thinking super groups.
That's my last super group, I think.
Okay, fair enough.
Done with super groups.
My number 4. I think I'm going to go out there and say it's probably one of the prototypical really alternative songs. And it's a strange song, but I really like it. It's oddly catchy, and it's just got a lot of different things going on it. And it's Cannonball by the Breeders. And what, did you have that on your list?
It was on my list.
It was? It is.
It is.
It is. Okay.
Well, but I have a backup. So
yeah, it's just,
it's great.
Something about that song. It has a lot of the things I don't usually like in songs, like distorted vocals that are put through like a speaker and stuff like that. But it's just something about the bass, and then there's like that guitar lick that goes over and over, and it's like the start stop chunking guitar. The Breeders were largely from Kim Deal, who was the bass player for the Pixies.
Mm-hmm.
She has a twin sister, Kelly Deal, who really wasn't a guitar player or a musician. I think she worked for NASA or something. And she was having issues with Kim Deal was having issues with the Pixies in and out. So she said, I'm going to make my own band. So she got her sister to come on and learn how to, play guitar. And and just Cannonball is just a strange song, but I really dig it because it's so weird. And there's not a lot of lyrics to it. Nothing. The lyrics don't even make sense. They're throwaway lyrics. So it's more just about the feel and the crunchiness and the chunkiness of the song, and just the fact that they hit it so hard too. Like the vocal, they just really push it right in your face. And that was from 93. Yeah, from their album Last Splash. So I think that was, for me, when I think about alternative music. And you think about the one-offs or the ones that kind of came and went, I think the Breeders probably doesn't get enough respect, but apparently so, because Eric thought of it as well. So
I as I mentioned, and I think in our Jewel episode, women in the 90s was, I think I probably paid more attention to the women artists than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So songs like that on the radio, hearing that, you always kind of pick your head up and you're like, I just love the way it starts and then stops. And then they reveal the title of the album, and that's probably the only lyric that actually makes any kind of sense. Is
that you can hear
the Last Splash, and there it is. But I love the chugging guitar, the bass line on this thing is great. Yeah, it's a real
good stuff,
fun song. So yeah, okay. So since
you're gonna go with number 3, you're gonna go right into.
I'm gonna go right into it. So
right.
I have to pick another woman artist. So. And this is going to be an odd choice. And I guess you could say it is alternative, but it's also sort of weird, and never thought in a million years that I'd be into this kind of thing. But
no.
The album is Dummy by Portishead. And I'm going to go with Glory Box as one of the hits off this record. And there's really not much to say. And I guess the song pretty much implies what it is. It's extremely erotic, extremely sexy. It really captures that mood. Love her vocal on it. That sort of, that smoky vocal. I love the trip hop thing. I love the, this is, they were kind of getting back into the sort of effects driven, putting that back into the music. You hear the sort of the scratching, like it's as if it's a vinyl record. Like,
mm-hmm.
It's, you hear that, like that static in the background and that kind of those little effects. But yeah, I really dig this album. I just love the mood of it. I love the sort of jazzy, kind of smoky, filled room feel, So, and her vocal is just absolutely amazing on it. I didn't really, it's beyond this album. I really didn't pay much attention to what they did after. They only put out like 2 more albums after it, and I think they're still together, but they're not really doing much. But yeah, that's my number 3. So, and in replace that, it would have been the Breeders, but that's I replaced it with just to make it.
He ruined it. He ruined it.
No, he didn't ruin it. I just
That's the first time we've ever had. No, we had Star Trek in our top 5 TV shows too. We did combine then. Nice, Portishead. Wow,
for the playlist, for the playlist purposes, at least we won't have any overlap. So we'll put Portishead on there.
Or, you know what? I wouldn't have a problem putting Breeders on the playlist twice. You hear it, and then it comes around again. I mean, I'm all about listening to songs more than once, so I wouldn't have a problem. Doubling up on the Breeders as well. So, Christy, number 3, top 5.
Well,
hits of the alternative.
Listening
90s.
to songs more than once. This song came out when I first started driving, so it reminds me of driving my 1986 Toyota Corolla. I had the cassette single. So I'm aging myself, obviously. And
cassette singles rule.
Cassette singles were great because you didn't have to rewind everything. But I would play this over and over again. Window hand cranked down. The window, I needed 2 hands to roll down, by the way. It didn't work that well. I needed a hand to go up, get the window up, and sing at the top of my lungs like I was getting paid for it. What's Up by 4 Non-Blondes.
Great song. Great choice.
That
Linda
song,
Perry.
Yeah, that Linda Perry's voice, that gravelly voice, song, when it came on, I was literally singing it like I was being paid to sing it, screaming at the top of my lungs, singing it like I know how to sing, which I don't. And takes me back to being 16 years old. I think it came out in 93, and it's just a great song. 25 years old, she's thinking, comparing society to an institution. She wants to start a revolution. Again, for me, a lot of this music was a perfect storm of just my age, where I was, brooding teenager. This song came out, and her voice, just that gravel to it, that rough.
And then she's got range. She goes up.
She does go up, but
those high notes that she hits too are fantastic.
And that song though was just like, wow, it's just a phenomenal song.
I remember our mutual friend Johnny. I remember he was really into them. He was really into that song. He would play it over and over.
I think he had the cassette. He used to play that.
Yeah,
I think we definitely got a couple of listens in on that.
You think he felt like a 16-year-old girl?
That was one of those ones that was just always on MTV.
What's that, Christy?
You think he felt like a 16-year-old girl trying to roll up his window with both hands?
Who knows?
My left forearm, I assure you, when I was 16, was significantly larger than my right. And I'm not kidding you. It was like
Popeye.
The struggle was real. I literally would have to hold my hand to get the window to go up, and then use both hands to get it to go down. It was. And kids today will never understand what it was like to have a.
Kelly had cars like that.
With the crank.
Absolutely.
Crank window. Yep. Linda Perry, Four Non Blondes is another one, right? They had this big album. I think they put out a follow up,
but it didn't do anything.
Yeah, but then Linda Perry went on to like a very prolific career. I mean, she became a in-demand producer, songwriter, working with like everybody under the sun: Jewel, Courtney Love, Gwen Stefani, Alicia Keys, James Blunt. I mean, she just became one of those behind the scenes people that really became in demand, and didn't necessarily find the pleasure or the fulfillment in front of a group like that. But that song was everywhere. Oh God, that was like an anthem of that year. Because it's just a very, very simple song too. There really wasn't a whole lot to it. So it was about the feel. It was really about the feel of that song, and the vocal performance is really what carries it.
And I think that's what one of the bandmates had said at one point is the song was about how it made you feel. Really had nothing it didn't really mean that it. Like every song doesn't have to have some meaning, but what was your interpretation of it? What did you get from it, and how did it make you feel? And it's a testament. Like I literally am brought back. If I hear that song, I am literally brought back to a point in time, and that's a good song. That's a strong song.
It was early too. I recall. Was it 92?
I think 93. I think it came out.
Okay.
So I just started driving, so I was 16. So.
Well. Yeah, so like I said before, like we're heading into that sort of analog territory, like acoustic guitars, and it's just coming right out of the 80s. I mean, that's something like that was really refreshing to hear.
I was going to say it was a welcome change.
Yeah,
absolutely, especially for probably people like us with a certain musical taste.
Yeah, no, definitely. Four Non Blondes, it was definitely a forerunner of what was to come with the whole Lilith Fair generation and the whole Lilith Fair group of female artists, like we talked about in the Jewel episode, where that was kind of really pushed to the forefront. And Four Non Blondes was kind of a little bit ahead of the curve on that, but a powerful song nevertheless. I mean, that's a great choice. That's a great choice.
Yep.
Number 3 for me, there's a rhyme. I was into this band in the 80s, and thank God they kind of did something in the 90s. So in the 80s, I discovered this really strange band called Camper Van Beethoven.
Okay.
Really eclectic, really weird, but poppy, just really weird stuff. And I really love them. I really got into them. They broke up in 1989. What happens in the 90s, the leader of Camper Van Beethoven, David Lowery, comes out with a new group called Cracker. So I got to hear a whole bunch of music from him again. And their first album, Kerosene Hat, had a song called Low, which is just a driving guitar song, just like kind of unrelenting, but then it's got a really subdued vocal, and which kind of goes up and down. It's just one of those ones that I really loved, and I was happy to see like a band that I liked in the 80s get reconfigured and adapt and say, okay, well, Camper Van Beethoven isn't really going to work for this. So let's come out with a new band called Cracker, and we'll be in the alternative thing. And they just literally transitioned right into it. And they had a whole bunch of other songs. But Low was like the one, if you ever saw the music video, it's with the comedian Sandra Bernhard, and she's boxing the lead singer, David Lowery, who's like, he's like skinny as a rail. And in the video, she's just like beating the crap out of him in a boxing ring. He just gets like totally bloodied by her. But that was just kind of, for me, a great kind of callback to a band that I liked, that broke up and then like reemerged as something totally different. Sounds nothing like Camper Van Beethoven, a total reinvention by the lead singer of something totally new. So I kind of dug that part of it. So that this is kind of like a sentimental, may not be the greatest of the alternative hits, but for me, more of a sentimental thing that a band that I liked kind of reemerged and resurged in the alternative 90s.
Yeah, I kind of think of bands like in the 90s, like Wilco. They kind of felt like that kind of band. They're very eccentric. They didn't stick to any one sort of thing. Like if you listen to something like Being There, I think it's their second album, or it might have been their debut. Every song is kind of different. You have a little bit of Americana. You have this sort of weird kind of stuff going. And also that kind of stuff always recalls like what Lindsay was doing with Fleetwood Mac and, those artists who were just refused to just stay in one place and just kind of just trying something new, trying to do different things. And Camper Van Beethoven.
It's
say that 5 times fast.
Three words that do not belong together.
They did Tusk. They recorded the album.
Yeah, they recorded Tusk
as
very lo-fi, very sedate,
and it was not anything like the original album.
No, it was like a sleepy, snory version. Like they just kind of
it's just all electronic. They went, there's a lot of like
vocals, like drowsy vocals.
Right.
So yeah, that's Camper Van Beethoven. But it was actually this was off their second album. So Low. Yeah. And another song, Get Off This, which was like a big song too as well. But another one, they didn't really sustain the career.
They didn't sustain, but they were a name. You knew in the 90s. You knew who Cracker was. It was definitely a.
Yeah, they were there, but
I think there were
sentimental favorite.
I think there were a lot of bands like that, kind of like what Eric was saying, where bands that showed versatility that just kind of popped back up or stayed. And you could probably rattle off a bunch of bands where you're like, they were there. They're not the most popular. They're not the biggest, but they had hits. They were present in that time period.
Yeah, they end up laying the foundation for all the other stuff. It's kind of like those bands that kind of are just rumbling underneath the big bands like the Nirvanas and the Pearl Jams and all that. There's got to be that second tier and that other level of just putting out a steady output and decent stuff. It's not it's not the top shelf stuff, but it's still great music, and that's probably where Cracker fell in. So. Mm-hmm. That's number 3. We are getting towards the apex, and I think the stakes are rising because my last 2 are like the big. These are like the big guns. I kind of left. I kind of gave you like the small ammo in the beginning, but the 2 and the 1 are like the big shots. So what do you have for number 2?
This is going to be totally off the wall for you, Dean, especially for you, Dean, because you never thought in a million years that I would ever listen to
Macarena,
this band.
Macarena?
But,
Mambo number 5.
You talk about feeling, okay? We talk about stuff that makes you feel not necessarily pleasant. You talk about just overall tone and sound. I have the utmost respect for Trent Reznor. And so therefore, March of the Pigs by 9 Inch Nails that song will just punch you in the, if I could drop one F-bomb, fucking mouth. It's just amazing the way, just the power of this song, how it just kicks in and just, oh my God. And I never thought in a million years that I would ever listen to something like, but again, that sort of, it's not one thing. That's not limited to one. It's not just metal. It's not just whatever. I loved his score work. I love the way he approaches music because he's not afraid to experiment with sound, and he's always giving you that off-putting. It's no wonder that people like David Fincher want to work with him for his films, because he gives you that uneasy, disturbed feeling, like it's just textures and all that kind of thing. And makes you feel something that you never thought you would feel in music, and certainly
he makes you face it. Yeah. He makes you face something that maybe you wouldn't have done on your own. He's a bridge to that. Yeah. I agree with you 1,000% on his music.
And in this song, it's like, there's this, and it's like the drums are like kicking. And then there's that little piano piece that kicks in, right? Doesn't it make you feel better? Like, like, what the hell was that? And to me, that's the song. It's like, holy shit, what is, where did that come from? Yeah. And then it just kicks right back into like, and it's like, but yeah, it's an amazing album. Downward Spiral. I love it all the way through. It's on my wall. I got it up there. It's on the top.
It's a little crooked. If you maybe want
to fix that album.
They're all crooked up there. But anyway,
representing the industrial genre as well.
It's probably a little manic, by your description, where you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down, and there were a lot of songs like that in the 90s that were manic, and because we kind of were, society was just going through a major change. It was, and the music is, I think, when you look back, reflective of that. It's also questioning things, and we're starting to have an issue again with authority. Again, the parallels between the 70s and the 90s for me is, you could just take it across the board with everything.
And much like film in the 90s too, some of that, like I mentioned, David Fincher, some of those disturbing movies that come out, which I love too. Like, I love challenging myself and trying to watch films that I had never seen before and that kind of thing. And it just like, not to get pretentious or anything like that. It's nothing to do with that. It's like, you just need to, sometimes you just need to break out of your comfort zone and just try new things. And this was definitely one of those bands that I felt, let me check them out. I mean, you hear so much about them. I was never really into the whole like metal, like real hard, like punk scene where mosh pit, it's like angry music. Never thought in a million years that I would ever get into that kind of thing. But like you say, it is up and down. It is manic, and it's true. There's truth to it. So there's, I love that honesty about it, and that just that raw power that it brings. So,
and that's why for me, the alternative generation of music, because of the honesty and the willingness to kind of look within, which I don't think we got necessarily from the 80s, but we did get with the 70s, is what is so appealing to me, and why I'm still, to this day, I will listen to these songs and not feel like I'm dated or I'm not in touch with them. But did you like Hurt?
Yeah.
And then I realized when I turned 42, you start forgetting things. So what's his name did a cover of Hurt.
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash.
Wow. Yep. And I would have got it if I went through the alphabet a few times. But yeah, I mean, you listen to Johnny Cash sing, a Trent Reznor song, and it's as haunting, if not more, actually. So
yeah, because he's putting that other spin on it. But but it's like just it's bizarre how things cross over, and I love that.
I think it's great. I do love that.
Yeah,
cool. That was your number.
That's my number 2.
Number 2.
Moving on,
Christy. Number 2. What's it going to be?
A little bit more popular of a band, much like Eric. And how could I not put Lightning Crashes from Live on my list? It came out in '94 on Thorn Copper, which killer album across the board, I think, in my opinion. And if you let the CD play long enough, you got to hear Horse at the end. I think you had to wait like a good 5 minutes. But kids today don't understand. You'd have to let a CD play out, and then eventually a hidden track would be there.
Yeah.
But Lightning Crashes came out. It just, Live had put out, I think, 3 singles, maybe Selling the Drama and I Alone, which 2 songs I love, came out, and they didn't really do much. And then Lightning Crashes came out, and people sat up and paid attention. And I was never one for music videos, and I didn't get the music video. And later on, they said that there was people just misinterpreted what the music video was. And if you know the song, if you watch the video, it looks like mother's dying, giving birth, and it's really not about any of that. It's about the circle of life. The song and the song was actually written. I think whether I don't know if it's true or not. Is they had a friend who died in a car accident from a drunk driver. And she was an organ donor. So her eyes went here, her heart went there. And so this song kind of evolved from just those emotions of just giving back. So when he's talking about, the placenta falls to the floor and you're talking about the eyes and all of these, metaphors, he's talking about just how life just continuously keeps going. And when one life ends, another begins in a sense, at least, that's also, my interpretation.
Yeah.
But, and then the song kind of just, it stayed popular. I don't know if you recall when Columbine happened in 99, lightning crashes. And I would listen to this. I recall being on the train going down to the city. It was 99. So I certainly wasn't in school anymore because I left college, but, they played the song over some of the news tracks, and it was very powerful to hear this song played over a lot of what was mixing it with the news and the reports of Columbine. And Columbine was a big introduction to what would unfortunately we'd be dealing with still today, with school shootings. But it just became even more powerful. And I think that the band would dedicate the song every time they played it at concerts to the Columbine victims and stuff. So it has its place in the 90s, and it deserves its recognition.
Yeah.
There's always live another band that kind of was big then, and then kind of like once the 90s came and went, it was kind of like what happened to them. I'm sure they still tour and they're still around. But another one, like prolific hit after hit after hit, and then like the well just like dries up. It's hard to I don't know if it was lightning in a bottle instead of lightning crashing. It's just kind of like with all these artists, literally, it's just kind of like there was so much good music coming out, but not sustaining like the career, which was very odd. And Ed Kowalczyk, who's the lead singer of Live.
Thank you for saying his last name, because I would have mutilated it.
Okay, you're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
Thank
just
you.
Pronunciation. And,
oh man,
he was in Fight Club.
I was going to say, come on.
He was in Fight Club.
He said, I would tell the lady not to have the soup.
Yep.
Don't have the soup.
He was the waiter at the end.
Clean food, sir.
Yep. And there was another rock star in that film as well. Meatloaf was in that
right,
too.
Meatloaf.
So there was a rock star from the 70s and a rock star from the 90s. So there's that bridge again.
Well, more importantly, Meatloaf was Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson.
Eric's like, I only saw Fight Club once. I don't remember.
Oh my God.
No, I've seen it. I've seen it 3 times actually.
Okay,
3, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
such a good movie.
Official movie of the 90s. Fight
It's
Club.
it's out there. It's because I'm used to Seven. I'm used to The Game. Like his more sort of, I guess, if you could say like more accessible or commercial. But Fight Club was a whole nother level.
Fight Club is like the alternative movie version of alternative music. It's
there
like
of
the 90s. It's like something that was just so different.
Yeah.
So
Why do 2 guys like us know what a duvet is?
that's it.
The things you own wind up owning you, which is one of the most true statements ever. It is.
Yeah.
The things you own wind up owning you. It's you have to go back and watch it at least 6 more times.
Yeah. Well, we will get to Fight Club as I'm sure.
I'm waiting for that
in an episode.
inevitable, David Fincher box set somewhere,
6 hour cut.
Criterion, releasing or something like that. But
it's
anyway,
never going to come out because David Fincher is just too much of a perfectionist to finish it.
That's true.
Good choice. So number 2 was Lightning Crashes by Live. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stay in that time period. I don't know if I'm stealing from Eric. So he said he's got all these backups in his pocket and all these different pouches of songs that he's got, so he may need to reach into it. If it's the same group but a different song, leave it, Eric.
Okay.
But my number 2 is Interstate Love Song by Stone Temple Pilots.
That's on my 25 list.
Such a great song.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
the
really
thing
is.
the thing about Stone Temple Pilots is, we talked about it a little bit in the Nirvana episode, is when all that music started breaking, Stone Temple Pilots really got a lot of flack. For some reason, they were called Pearl Jam imitators. They were compared to, everyone was saying, oh, these guys are like a poor man's Pearl Jam. It was when their first album came out. So it's kind of like when Plush came out, you know, kind of, I could kind of hear it. You know, he had a different way of singing, Scott Weiland. So I was happy to see Stone Temple Pilots kind of carve something out that was their own. And when Purple came out, and it was this and Vaseline and just songs like that, an Interstate Love Song it's a driving song, right? I mean, it's literally in the title, Interstate. It's like one of those songs that it's got like this acoustic guitar kind of opening, there's some kind of slidey guitar, and then you have the 3 hits on the cymbal, like tss, tss,
yep,
tss, and then the song just kind of kicks in, you know, and it's chugging along, and it's got that pedal to the metal feeling. You want to be on the road, you want the wind in your hair. It's just such a great effort from them. And it was something that really kind of started to separate Stone Temple Pilots as their own sound, instead of being in the wash of all this grunge that was coming out, and everything was sounding the same because that was the style of music. And they were trying to, you know, kind of cash in, and a lot of it was coincidental. But this song, Interstate Love Song, just kind of really, I think, was a high watermark for STP in forging their own destiny and kind of coming out with something that was a little bit different. And that was 94.
So is that your Jerry Maguire song instead of what Tom Petty song is he singing in Jerry Maguire?
I have a lot of songs.
Free Fallin'
in the
yeah.
car. No, there's too many. Well, we're going to do an episode about that.
About you singing
car songs
at the top of your lungs.
It is. It's one of those songs. It's a definite, absolute classic. And yes, it was an honorable mention, but it didn't make my official list. So no,
didn't make the cut.
No.
All right.
But that was a great song, great album. Great,
yeah,
you know, that's one album they actually had.
What
that
album
I actually
was,
went out and bought.
Was Sour Girl on?
Sour Girl was, I believe, was on Purple as well.
Yeah.
I believe that was with the video, with the Teletubbies. Like, it was like really dark, weird video. Sarah Michelle Gellar was in it.
And I hated watching videos, actually, because I
no, that was on their fourth album called Number 4.
I didn't have my own interpretation of songs, so videos. They also did Stone Temple Pilots did a really good cover of what was it, Necromian, with Led Zeppelin song? What was it?
Dancing Days.
Dancing Days. That was a good
cover. Yeah, they did a nice version of Dancing Days.
Yeah, I don't. As a Pearl Jam fan, I never thought that they were like a low level Pearl Jam. They were completely different. I
don't think they sounded alike at all.
Yeah, no, they got some flack. Well, no, definitely not then. On their first album, they were kind of getting that, you know, because he had that kind of, like I said, if you listen to Plush, it's that kind of lower register, even flow voice that Eddie Vedder has, like that kind of thing, you know, and so it was like, oh, this, you know, just another carbon copy of this.
We kind of addressed that with Nirvana too. Their first, in utero was like, it sounded like a Pearl Jam type of record. Like it was very similar in style, and then they took it to something else, you know.
You ready for number one?
I'm ready for number one.
Looks like you're ready. You're looking down. It's like, okay, I'm ready for number one. So.
Okay, so here's where I guess I'm breaking a rule or whatever, but when I think of alternative music, I think I would be remiss not to include this on my list because it just means so much. And I actually met these guys, and I met them through our friend Andy, who did some episodes with us, and he introduced me to this band, and I wanted to kind of bookend my list with another really great fun song, and that it's King of Swing by Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. The whole swing
they count
revival came in, where again, like what are we doing here? Like, what's going on? Like, this is like weird. Like, where did this come from? Like, the movie Swingers came out and they were in the film. They were performing this song in the background. I think it's just a great track. And these guys are legit. They're taking this thing seriously. It's not like, you talk about things that came and went, like the fad kind of went away.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several other bands who were doing it, but they started out as like punk bands, like Cherry Poppin' Daddies. They were like more of a punk band. And then they went the whole swing thing, and then they faded out. They disbanded. Do you think of Brian Setzer taking the rockabilly, starting there,
Yeah.
and then going big band, right?
Yep.
Joe Jackson did the same thing. And as a matter of fact, Scotty, Morris, the lead singer of Big Band, like Joe Jackson was a big influence on him. Actually, his swing album that he did of covers really inspired him to get this thing going and get this band. And see, these guys are all classically trained musicians. I actually met them at a show, like backstage, and when talking to them, the coolest thing for me was when they were telling me that when he was telling me that his favorite artist, his hero is Cab Calloway. You can't get any better than that. As an old soul, we talked about me being an old soul. You can't get any better than somebody telling you that Cab Calloway is your ultimate hero. And he actually did an album. They actually did an album of covers finally, but they're still together, and they're still doing this kind of thing. And I have really fond memories of my first date with Kelly was at Courtney and Andy's wedding. And she was
That was your
practicing.
first date? A wedding?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that was my first date. My first official date with Kelly.
You went all in
to the wedding.
Yeah, seriously, you that's all in on that.
Yeah. Well, they invited me to sing. They invited me to sing at the wedding because we would all go to karaoke and stuff. So that was a big thing. So I did a lot of James Taylor, and so they wanted me to sing "You've Got a Friend." So I did that. So I impressed Kelly by me singing, and she impressed me with her swing dancing. I was like, whoa, I've got some skills. She was like cutting a rug on with this song. So that this song means a lot, there. And I remember she was practicing with this other guy that we knew. And I guess she knew that she was going to be doing this because she was wearing underneath her dress, she was wearing like these bright rainbow colored like swimming trunks or whatever underneath. And so when he was like flipping her around and like under the legs, the whole bit, you could see like these brightly neon, like what the, like it was, that's left quite an impression, but it was awesome. So yeah, it's a very sentimental favorite. It's just, if you ever get a chance to see, if you haven't seen them, if you ever get a chance to see them, check them out. They put on such a great show, and and like I said, they're still doing it. And that's legit. That, I mean, they didn't waver. They're still doing the swing thing. They didn't try to make it more modern or anything like that. It is what it is. It's true blue. Great band, great song. So nice. There it is.
It counts.
It counts.
It counts.
Yeah,
you're in.
It's alternative, like, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely.
Whoever thought that something like that would come back?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with that, and with swingers, it just kind of became that whole subculture.
Yeah, it's money.
You are so money.
It's so money.
Yeah, we don't want to. We start talking about swingers, we'll never get out of here.
Right? It'll be a good conversation.
Christy, are you ready for your number one alternative hit of the 90s?
I am.
You ready to uncork it? I'm
ready to uncork it. I don't think it would be a surprise which band it's going to be.
Okay, lay it out. Let's have it.
This band is you had said earlier, Dean, it was how all these bands, they would come out with this music, and even like live, they'd have all these albums, and then they would just kind of dissipate, or maybe they'd have one killer album and then they dissipate, or a couple of hits. And this band stood the test of time. They're still together. They've been the same band since 1998 because they went through a couple of drummers, and that is Pearl Jam. And the song I picked, which was incredibly hard because I could have made a list of 5 Pearl Jam songs, was I went with Black. Black was off the album 10, and it's pure poetry. And that's the thing that attracted me to Pearl Jam and to Eddie Vedder. And I think Kelly talked about this on the Jewel podcast, and I don't think it's generational. I think it's personality. As soon as I got a CD or I got a cassette, the first thing I did is I opened it and I read the lyrics, because the first thing anything was to me was poetry. And then the music would just complement that. So if I felt a connection to something that was being said, then I was that hook, line, sinker. I was done. I was sold. So in Black, he says, but I don't know where it is. But says, I know you'll be a star in somebody's sky, but why can't it be mine? And there's so much pain in that. There's just, and when he's singing it, especially with his voice, you can really feel it. And Black is about letting go, and it's a really personal song. It was such a personal song that they didn't want to release it as a single, because they didn't feel like you should just release songs because you wanted to have hits. And and I think one of the reasons why Pearl Jam has sustained so long is not only that Eddie Vedder was not a drug addict or an alcoholic. He dabbled, just like anybody else. He drinks, and he's a cigarette smoker, and he's not a big drug addict or does drugs at all. And neither did most of the band. I think maybe one of them went into rehab, and I think they've been clean since. But besides being relatively clean, their reluctancy to be quote unquote rock stars and to just be true to the music and to do the music they wanted to do, write the music they wanted to write, and to just play by their own rules is a testament to them and their longevity.
I agree.
You can't argue. You cannot argue with it. And I think that Pearl Jam is probably one of the most important bands of our time. And not because of the commercial success, because they didn't even want that, but because of the music, the lyrics, and what they contributed just across the board. So, and it was really hard to pick one. I will tell you, if you want to go over some of the extra songs, there's not one bad song on 10. Versus there's not one bad song. I happen to love Vitalogy. When Vitalogy came out, a lot of people who were big fans of Pearl Jam didn't like it because they felt like they were getting a little soft and selling out. And I looked at it much like with Alanis Morissette, is they're growing as artists, they're aging, they're experiencing life, they're going through their changes as human beings, just like we are. And so their music is a reflection of that. Mm-hmm. And so as we're growing with them, we're kind of...
You should relate.
Yeah. And I never felt like they were selling out. I always felt like I was relating to where they were.
Yeah.
Even though our age differences were, he's older than me, but it's still I just grew with them. And so that's just Pearl Jam for me is when you talk about the 90s and alternative, it's Pearl Jam.
I remember Eddie Vedder just always in the headlines, like he said this and he refuses to do this and he won't, he's always thinking of the fans, Ticketmaster, that whole thing.
Eek.
And I always thought it was awesome. I was like, this guy's, he does, he
had a fan. I don't know if she was trying to commit suicide or just trying to get his attention. She crashed into his wall of his house. And he was just like, I don't want this. Like, this is not what I'm about. Like, I'm writing music because I have something to say. I have something creative to give to the world, but I don't want, I want this. I don't want the other 50 things that come with it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Look, the money's nice, but I don't need the fame. I don't need all the accolades. And that was Eddie Vedder. I mean,
it's unfortunate that people like Kurt Cobain was probably going through the same thing, thinking the same way, but he unfortunately dealt with it in a different way.
Yeah.
Instead of
I don't think that Nirvana could sustain. If you look at their second album, it was very much in the vein of their first album. And the thing about Pearl Jam is that they were able to evolve, which was key. is the grunge thing kind of came and went.
Yeah.
And yeah, Pearl Jam was caught up in the wave of that, but they were able to swim to the shore, as it were, and kind of come out and continue to change. Eddie Vedder aligned himself with Neil Young. He aligned himself with a bunch of other artists that kind of where they kind of got their credibility too, of not just, oh, they're this grungy band, but they're artists, and they kind of earn the respect of not only their peers, but of the fans. Now, Christy, when you said that they went through a couple of drummers, I thought you were going to say the band was Spinal Tap. But I was going to say that was the 80s. I said, when I thought, okay, Spinal Tap. Wow, that was really like out of left field. Spinal Tap.
It was number 26 on my list.
I was going to say no. That was the 80s, so you can't really use Spinal Tap. But great choice with Pearl Jam. They came in and out of the list multiple times as well.
Well, Hunger Strike. I felt like I got them in twice with Hunger Strike.
You absolutely did. You pulled an Eric.
It was not
flouted the rules,
and I was able to get, because I didn't pick Soundgarden, and I struggled with that, so I got Chris Cornell in there as well. I'm very strategic.
There you go. Nice. Well thought out. Not like our lists. We just throw them together, Eric and I. I use the dartboard method. My number one is probably, I'm going to say it's probably the number one alternative pop song. I think it epitomizes.
Now I know what it is.
The pop versions of what like alternative pop could be, and it is "You Get What You Give" by New Radicals. What?
Honorable mention again.
Yeah. What?
It's one of my honorable mentions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a great,
great this choice. Kind of song, it like captured like a moment in time. It actually wasn't a big chart hit. It only hit number 36 on the charts on Billboard. But it had that MTV impact. It had the alternative chart impact. It was just kind of a song that was just kind of bouncy, poppy, very well constructed, very hooky. Like the hook in this is like if you're a pop fan, like it's got a hook for days on it. And it's just one of those weird ones. And this was literally lightning in a bottle, because New Radicals was really like kind of one person, Greg Alexander, pretty much. And he's the only consistent person on the album. There was different people on almost every different song. And kind of he got very disenchanted with things very quickly. And they made this one album, and that was it. And then, gone. He went back to songwriting, went back to doing whatever he was doing, and they literally disappeared. I mean, the epitome of a one-hit wonder, because they didn't even it's not like they tried. It's not like he said, okay, let's try and keep swinging at it. It was like one and done. It's like, okay, this is, we're done here. But it was just this really just hook-laden song, great lyrics, kind of, a lot of name checking at the end, Courtney Love, Marilyn Manson, all that kind of stuff, Beck, all the stuff of the time.
That, by the way,
he did get a little flack. We'll kick your ass in, and he actually he met Beck somewhere afterwards, and said, it was just a song, nothing personal. Beck was like, okay, and then Marilyn Manson was like, I don't care if he says he's going to kick my ass. I just don't want to be mentioned in the same lyric as Courtney Love.
That's great.
So the funny thing about New Radicals is obviously they went dormant. They disappeared. With the new election, they actually said if Joe Biden wins the election, New Radicals will reform and play this song for the inauguration. And they did. They literally came together and played the one song. How many years later? 20 something years later. But I think it's just the ultimate. If you're looking for the sugary pop side of alternative music, I think it's New Radicals, and like one and done. This is it. This is all you need from them. Yeah. They had another follow-up hit. In interesting trivia, there was a member of New Radicals, Danielle Brisebois, and you might know her from 70s TV. She was on All in the Family. She was the little girl that they brought in at Nancy Bunker's place. She was in New Radicals.
I did not know that.
She played keyboards and did a little backing vocals too.
That's great.
So that's it. So let's go quickly as we do.
Wait,
Eric,
so lose. You Get What You Give, which to this day, it was on my list, by the way. But it's one of those songs that when it comes on, you just sing it and you pump it. And it has nothing to do with it, but the rap version of the song that kind of has the same feel.
There's a rap version?
Well, it's not a rap version, but a rap, yes, it reminds me of Lose Yourself from Eminem, where when that comes on, you just get really pumped.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens when this song comes on. You just get super pumped up. It doesn't matter where you are.
It's just a great poppy.
It is
poppy, fun, but alternative song as well.
Yes, it is alternative.
So let's roll through. Eric, give your 5 through 1 real quick. Christy, you'll give yours, and I'll give mine, and we'll kind of close it out. We'll do one. Each one of you pick one honorable mention quickly. Just one, just randomly pick one, and we'll go through that as well. But go ahead, go through 5 to 1.
All right. So number 5 was "Send Me on My Way" by Rusted Root. Number 4 was "Obscured" by the Smashing Pumpkins. Number 3, "Glory Box" by Portishead. Number 2, "March of the Pigs," 9 Inch Nails. And number 1, "King of Swing," Big Bad Voodoo Daddy.
Nice.
Yeah. So are we doing the
Christy?
Okay.
No, Eric, we're not doing whatever you thought.
I thought we were giving our honorable mention at that.
We'll go through and then we'll get
to that. Yeah. Okay.
Number 5 was "Hunger Strike," coming off Temple of the Dog, 1991. Then I had "Wake Up," coming off of Mad Season's album Above in 1995. "What's Up," coming off of Bigger, Better, Faster, More by 4 Non-Blondes. I believe the album was released in 93. "Lightning Crashes," coming off Throwing Copper, which was released in 1994. And "Black" off of Pearl Jam's 10, which came out in 1991.
Nice. My number 5 was "The Way" by Fastball. Number 4, The Breeders with "Cannonball." Number 3 was "Low" by Cracker. I just noticed those three all have pretty much one word titles. "Interstate Love Song" by Stone Temple Pilots was number 2. And then, of course, number 1, "You Get What You Give" by New Radicals. Okay, we'll do speed round. Pick one, just one from your list. Eric, rattle it off real quick.
Oh, my God.
One honorable mention.
One honorable mention goes to Alanis Morissette's from her, it wouldn't be her second, her follow-up to Jagged Little Pill, "Love Unsent." Love that song. I love how she goes through all of these, her former boyfriends and people that she knows. It's really personal. I absolutely really like the way it's like a conversation. And it's just, most people would kind of be turned off by that, but she gets so personal with it. And it's just, I love the honesty there. So, and I love her, she sounds very vulnerable in the song, her voice, it's not a hard rocking kind of thing. It's just this real, I like the mood of it. So I
Cool.
would have chosen that.
There we go.
Yeah.
Alanis Morissette finally cracked. I thought she was going to be in here earlier.
I don't consider her alternative, which is, I guess, why she didn't. Well, I don't consider her alternative. She doesn't. When I think of alternative, unfortunately, I kind of associate it more with the grunge, and I was going in that direction. Alanis Morissette is one of my all-time favorites. Great song, Eric. Great album, and yes, she's completely vulnerable in that because, again, it's coming off of this angry. It's kind of like Pearl Jam. She's angry. She was mistreated by this married guy, and she's pumped up, and then she goes through this change where she finds her spirituality. She's talking about forgiveness. She's forgiving herself. She's forgiving these other people, and she's realizing, I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, it just, like we were talking about with Pearl Jam, just the evolution of an artist and just growing with them and kind of doing that. That's a great pick, actually.
Cool.
I wasn't even thinking about Alanis Morissette. I would probably, I don't know, this is really hard. Oh God.
There can be only one.
No, there can be so many. Oh my goodness. One?
Just say the first one you see.
Spin the wheel.
There you go.
Put them on the wheel.
Put them on the wheel.
I think I have to do another Pearl Jam. I think I have to do Yellow Ledbetter.
Nice.
It's personal. It's about a Yellow Ledbetter comes from yellow letter, which is when someone died in the military, they would send the letter in a yellow envelope. And this kid got it and found out his brother died. And he's this grungy kid. And so the song is inspired by that. And this kid he's walking by a porch and he sees an American flag and he wants to kind of say something to these people who are sitting out there, but they look at him and he's got greasy hair and he's tattered clothes. You know, he's complete grunge style and they want nothing to do with him. And it's kind of like, so the connection he thought he had with these people because of the loss of his brother being military and them having a flag and thinking that they had a connection they didn't have at all. And it's just that moment of just realizing that we're not the same.
Yeah.
So,
cool. Great choice.
There's a lot more here.
Yes. Wow. Okay. Typewritten.
Well, I printed it out from the computer
in Arial font.
I did. Yeah. I actually did an old typewriter.
There you go.
My honorable mention is there's no backstory. It's just one of the songs, and it's one that I can just listen to over and over. And it is another 0-hit wonder. These guys like had this song out. I don't even know if it charted at all. But it's All For You by Sister Hazel.
Okay.
I just really like that song. There's just something about it. It's got that acoustic, like kind of runs in the beginning of it, and it's just kind of got just a really like kind of simple, solitary vocal, and then it just kind of kicks in, and it's just one of those bouncy songs. It's a song you can sing along to, and it's just one of those ones that when I was thinking about this list, it's all, you know, and that's what I wanted to do is kind of champion some of these one-hit wonders that kind of got. I mean, my list was full of that kind of stuff. Is all this great music, but they had one, but they all contributed to like the patchwork and the quilt of the 90s of this type of music, you know, and it's really important. And you know, like I said, when you think about it, it's kind of there was some titans. We didn't even talk about Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know, Nirvana.
It's amazing, right? Nirvana didn't make anyone's list.
Green Day didn't make the list. There were so many titans in the 90s that were just big of that time. Bush, Oasis, so many that were gigantic.
We'll probably get a lot of flack for this.
Yeah, probably.
No, but it's hard. And like Dean said,
it is.
I have Space Hog on my list. In the meantime, great song.
I had Eve 6.
Eve 6.
Well, you got to go. You got to stop somewhere. That's why we have.
And that's the thing. It's like and watch it spin around to a beautiful oblivion. That's perfect. Like, well, this is the thing.
Yeah, this is the thing that Dean and I like. We kind of go back and forth on it all the time. It's like I'm always about the more subjective. You got to go with what you feel, and I putting together committing to a top 5. You know what you think is the best. That's tough. I mean, it's of its time, and it's, you know, we're not you can go by the charts, you can go by the hit, you know, how much airplay it got, but ultimately what it really comes down to is what it means to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm always going for that. So
this subject then is ripe for interaction from you, the listener. Jump on social media, join us on Facebook and Instagram. Let us know what we missed from the 90s. There was a plethora. So this was by no means all inclusive whatsoever. This is literally not even skimming the surface. This is like the tip of the iceberg, barely. So there's a lot there. And I think we're going to make this into a Spotify playlist, so you can check that out and you can listen to some of the ones you know, maybe some of the ones you don't know. And let us know what ones that you like as well. So I think that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. We want to thank Christy Cuomo for joining us. A job well done. She brought some classics from the vault with her, so we appreciate that. That's always a great thing. So thank you for joining us. It's much appreciated.
Thank you for having me. And when we want to do the obscure one-hit wonders from the 90s, please let me know. And apologize to your friend Andy, because Nirvana made no one's list, and I'm sure he's not going to be happy.
Yeah, well, maybe next time. Maybe next time. So join us on social media, 3324 Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. We have our Facebook group there. Give us your feedback. Let us know what songs you would put on your ultimate or top 5 90s alternative hits. For Eric, this has been Dean. We will see you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.